also in visiting delegates who are also doing on the call. Welcome to everybody. We're going to go to item 3, which is review and adopt today's agenda. Ms. Naka, can you move the agenda into the record?
Yes, good morning, everybody. This is the proposed agenda for the Budget and Finance Committee of the nomination process, September 19th, 2023. It's a regular meeting, presiding as Chandler Ferris, chairperson, our Slater vice chairperson, Vice Budget and Finance Committee, number 2, and the Rock Commission. One public meeting, will call the invitation to the representative of the state of the community about the agenda. 4, review about the journal, there are none. 5, receive report. 8, creating fiscal efficiency by following the Budget and Finance Committee's priorities for Commissioners Donald P. Alden at the Office of Management and Budget. First bullet is identify challenges. The second bullet is changes made thus far. Third is needed policy changes, and then the fourth is beginning for the next 3.5 years. The ARPA update presenters Tom Terra, Director of Fiscal Recovery Funds Office. C, recap of the FY24 companies of budget on the reality of the status of other needs, allocations, other committed funds not utilized. Presenters strong interim controller OOC, our new contract and service agreement implementation for FRF projects. Presenter Shayla Draper, division of community streamlining object of OOC for FRF allocations. Presentation on controller OOC. We streamline your budget setup process for FRF allocations. Presenters on the office, and then pages, the litigation that they presented at Attorney General Department of Justice, business 970 business A, application 23. Please scheduling the strategic session, the date, time, those are blank. Date, closing the session, and announcements. The next meeting is October 3rd, 2023 at Chapel.
Thank you, Ms. Naka. Committee members, do you have a motion to accept today's agenda?
Motion.
Legislative committee motion to adopt it. Second. Motion. Committee members, do you have any amendments to today's agenda? Second call for amendment to the agenda.
Sure.
Vice Slater.
Thank you. Ms. Knock, I just brought up a couple issues. One is that Mr. Buell wants to move 5A to the end of the report. And then 2, that we need to schedule a substitute meeting for the October 17th meeting that'll take place during the fall session. And if there's 2 ways we could do this, I could change my motion to include those changes, or someone could motion to amend the agenda to do that. But here's the committee thinks. I think step B, we just modify to say schedule a session, and also substitute data.
Thank you, Vice Chair Slater. Committee members, Mr. Vial has requested to be moved to the end of the report. Is there a motion to move Mr. Vial's report 5A to the end of the report, or the committee can also consider deferring that to the next meeting? And the other I guess, what else would the committee like to do in regards to the October 17th meeting? We can also schedule an October 17th meeting at the October 3rd meeting.
Is vice chair considering to add this to the main motion?
Yeah.
Okay, well, I'm requesting to have the motion party modified to include moving Mr. Dominic Vial's meeting next meeting, our next the present report until the next meeting, and then also adding on to today's discussion. Scheduling. Rescheduling on October 17th.
Thank you.
Modification request.
Okay. So just for clarification, Vice Chair, your motion is to move 5A. What about 5C?
5A and 5C is the end of the agenda.
So we're not going to move 5A to the next meeting.
Oh, A to the next meeting, C to the end of the agenda. I thought you were saying you wanted to do it at the end of this.
Well, that's what we wanted, but speak for them and decide to move to the next meeting.
All right, that's fine. We want something to sort of that.
So that's 5A and 5C to the next agenda. That's the request.
I'll consent that modification.
Yeah, it has to be.
Well, we then you could.
Yes, you can, you can see.
Nobody else did.
They introduce this personnel.
All right, the motion, the request was to modify the motion to have 5A and 5C deferred to the October 3rd budget and finance committee meeting, and also to add a scheduling item, which is to reschedule. The Vice Chair said he just wanted to say that. Okay, do we have a second to the motion?
Well, you just asked more.
That's fine. I'm okay.
Go to the main motion. Okay. All right. Delegate Hazard, concurs with the modification. So we are going to go to, this is amending the motion. Back to the
It's just doing it all.
all right. Ms. Can we do a roll call for the modifications?
Yes, Madam Chair, I can vote for the agenda and modifications. Mark, I heard how you vote. Thank you, Madam Chair. Green, I'm all, how do you vote?
Green.
Thank you, I'm all, there was green, I'm all, how do you vote? The modification? Yeah. Okay, thank you, I'm looking at the bottom of the screen. I'm all, James, how do you vote?
I vote green, sorry.
Thank you, I'm on the table on screen. Madam Chair, we have one member voting in conservative opposing amendment screen, benefit not voting, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Malcolm, committee members. We're going to move on to item 4, which is review and adopt the journals. We have no journals today to adopt. So we're going to go to item 5, which is receiving reports. Our first report after the modification agenda is the ARPA update from Mr. Tom Quintero.
Quintero is coming from an email OPD. He is walking around.
Okay. After we hear from Mr. Quintero on an update, we also have our interim controller, Sean McCabe, who is also on his way over to report on the status of unmet needs and allocations and other uncommitted funds not utilized. And after that, we'll have Ms. Sheila Draper from the Division of Community Development give us an update on the IDIQ and subrecipient agreement implementation at the FRF office to give a update to the committee on how the money is moving from the central government to the subrecipient agreements or through the IDIQ contract. Welcome, Mr. Quintero. You're just on time. we're on receiving reports, we're on our update.
I just press it right from. We sent you the hard copies. Yesterday to all of the council. I try to share everything with council when they send it to you guys, because then we don't get behind with other stuff. The important one, this is the eligibility determination one. There's now 742, looks like. That's the part where DOJ has done their work, so when they review it to see if the projects are eligible or not, this is that list. I'm not going to go into the subrecipient agreement portion of it or the account setup. I believe that's later on in your agenda. So they'll get that back into that. This is the latest report as of the 15th of September. The blue section is the administrative one. There is going to be a meeting on the 26th. That's. I can't read. The blue section is the administrative regulatory support cost. There is going to be a meeting on Tuesday, I believe the 26th, where they're going to be reviewing those ones. I just came out of a meeting that's sponsored by Chief of Staff Sandoval, and he's going to be taking a look at some of the stuff. Remember with the discussion that they had to relook at where the funding are. The main thing that's coming out of there, just so you're aware, is a lot of people are looking for buildings, and so we'll be revisiting that one. Taking a look at the expenditure rates. The big thing that came out of that meeting just now was the personnel issue, getting people hired so that we can get things done, people into that. So the blue section of that, the meeting you guys are invited to, they asked me, council wants to come attend. I said, sure, you know, they need to know all this information as well. So the blue section is the administrative costs. The green section is the, on page 1 of 11, is the CARES defunded one. We did, I did include in the packet, there was a directive that was made at the Navigated committee meeting to start working on certain things for it. So the very first one was the meeting that we had with NTUA, and that's this packet here that has the discussion from that, the notes that were taken, who all attended that meeting. I think it's a good way to interact with people that got the funding inside with the partners within the Navajo Nation. So it was a good start. It was kind of rough at the beginning, but it's starting now to have people have discussion on it. Subsequent to that, NTUA provided 3 reports that I included in the packet. What we're trying to do is kind of replicate these ones, but we did meet with them because I know at some point delegates are going to ask me, we want the breakdown by chapters, and NTUA understands that now, so they're going to be modifying their template for that as well. We also have a discussion with them on, we need to modify the approved budgets because there was a provision for administrative costs, 2%. Remember the one that was underneath CJY 4121? It was included in their expenses, but they need to update it now to reflect in their budgets. So we're going to be doing a modification for that to process those ones so that individuals can, it's included in the budget. It's already part of theirs. The part that controller is on my tail about right now is we need to come up with a reporting monitoring system, which is part of the ARPA funding portion of it. We're trying to transition Lisa's team from working with the chapters to get eligibility determinations completed for the 211. And if you look at this slide here, page Arnold is the one that prepared this report. On page 11 of 11, it gives you the breakdown. Delegate Prodi has 4.2 million. Delegate Ness has 2.5 million. Delegate Hastings has all hers allocated. Delegate Slater has 3.6. Delegate Johnson, 500,000. Delegate Yawzi, 160,000. Delegate Curley, $9. Delegate Yanito, 6.9 million. Delegate Simpson, 2.3 million. Delegate Charles Newton, 8.8 million. Delegate Toll, 4 million. Delegate Simonson, 4.6 million. Delegate Nesbitt Gay, 16,000. Delegate Daniels, 1.9 million. Delegate Asheret, 1.8 million. Delegate Notel, 1.3 million. Delegate Norman Begay, 4.3 million. Delegate So, 8.8 million. Delegate Nez, 8.8 million. Delegate Damon has all his allocated. Delegate Parrish, 2.1 million. Delegate Paul, all is appropriated. Delegate Arvizo, 2.5. Delegate James, 151,000. What we're now doing, this doesn't include the recent ones that were approved. There was about 40 something projects, 45 projects that need to have budgets set up. Those aren't included here. I don't believe they are yet. So those have to be updated. We also sent a request over to Legislative Council. There were 4 legislations that were introduced with final authority. Remember, there was a revision made for the chapter regional expenditure plans to have final authority at Nabikiat here. So there's 4 pending. 2 of them had already been approved by Nabikiat here and were ready for council. And 2 of them still hadn't gotten on the Nabikiat committee agenda yet. So there were 4. I believe that was Delegate Toll and Delegate Nez, I believe. And 2 other ones. So we did send that request over to Legislative Council. Should those legislation be reintroduced, or what is your recommendation on that? We're still waiting for a response. We did send it to Dana and to Cecilia to give us guidance on that. Probably the easiest would be to do is reintroduce it with the new final authority at Nabikiat here, so that those ones can get in the process. So what we're trying to do is finish this portion of it so that we can transition then to the monitoring and reporting part of it. I did have a meeting on Friday with a vendor out of Albuquerque that have done some work with legislative services, with community development, with judicial, the DOJ, to see if we can develop something where we can get input from people on a monthly basis on all of these projects. So it would take a look at the financial portion of it, how much was spent that month, a progress report on the activities for each individual project broken down by the communities that are there. So that's ongoing right now. The part that we're running into a bit of an issue is we're now starting the reconciliation process, and Delegate Khadi was very correct on some of these projects that were funded. We're now looking back at, and we've asked for it both from the legislative side and the executive side, is we really need a recap of all of the capital projects that are out there. Nobody has that one set of information that says permanent trust fund. This is all you have different pockets of money that are sitting out there, but nobody's ever really reconciled it. And we're trying to do that on our own. The citizen alone has over 170 amendments to it. So we're trying to get all of those ones in order so that we can take that list and go back against the projects that are here. So what we've learned is our team was able to finish up the listing for NTUA. And I did send NTUA a copy of that. I see Mr. Ashman's here from the brothers in town. So what we're trying to do is reconcile the ARPA based on budget that what else was already allocated in there. And what we found is that there's some that were under this side and on this side. Tohaji Lake, the water project there had money that was allocated on that side and money on this side. So what we have to do is determine, do they need both pockets of money? Is the ARPA money going to be encumbered by the certain deadline so that that happens? NTUA has advised, their financial person, we're already beginning to analyze, what we're probably not gonna spend so that we can report that back to the Navajo Nation. So what we did is, as I said, we're using NTUA as a model so that we can replicate that with everybody else. So what we did on the NTUA report, which is this one. Get it? This one here is the, so NTUA has 14 subrecipient agreements. The total amount of that is $312,109,402. So the revised budget is the same. What we've expensed them is all through the 50% advance. 2 of the 14 are now in their second portion. So they receive 75% of the money up front. So what we've done is we've advanced up to as of yesterday, $156,968,165.40. And what's available out there still to be added is $155,141,236. So what we did is we took, this is the sheet that says this is the date that they were paid out, the second page. Then the next page is, this is NTUA's report as of June 30th. And that's the information. This is what we're considering their narrative. Then they sent, I believe I emailed it to all of you guys too. Remember the pop-out windows for the financial report of it? So what we did is we took their data, which they provided right here in the pivot files where it pops out. So what we did is we did a really quick analysis of it. So if you go back to the first page,
What's the title of the first one?
of the NTUA
September.
as of September 18th. But the report, the last report that we have is from June 30th. I believe they did July 10th or something like that on their report, but we took that information. So what we did, this is the part that we need to start doing on our side. If you take the first contract, number 1, contract CO15193, and they were advanced 14 million. And you go to the third page. So what they've actually spent out of the 14 million is the 12 million. So they're at about 43% of the overall. So they should be eligible to get the next one. The next one then is they got 16 million or 1.6 million. They spent 254,000. 5 million, they spent 374,000. 2 million, they spent 1.8 million. 566, they spent 561. 1.8 million, they spent 230,000. Then you go down to the broadband, they got 2.6 million, and they spent 459,000. The broadband, 4.8 million, 2.6 million that they've spent. You go to the last page, and these are the new ones where they actually finally got their money. They have the electricity of 48 million that was advanced. They spent 6 million out of that. And then the others have no expenditures. Those were just recently paid out. So if you go back to the first page, that'll tell you when they got their money there. And then going to the water cisterns, which was 47 million, they spent 3 million of it. So we're already beginning to see that they're also having difficulty expending their dollars, even though we advanced them all of the money that was there. So at this point, remember, they were NTUA was like, we haven't paid us, you haven't paid us. Everything with NTUA that can be paid has been paid. So there shouldn't be any more discussion of Navajo is doing this, they're holding all of that up. That should all be taken care of right now. So all the money that's going to be there, they're already working on calculations to say this we might not be able to spend these ones. So we can report that back to you guys. What we're doing now is this is the report that just came minutes ago or what? 8 minutes into my presentation. This is the reconciliation. This is not in your email. I apologize. We've been working on this one. And what this is the breakdown of all. Not just, okay, not all 14 of them are done. Okay, but this is what we're doing. So these are for the NTUA projects. So on the first page, the electricity, which is contract C 015,193, account number is K211,528. These are all the customers that are in there. And we're missing the dollar amounts from that page. So if you go to the next one, CO 15194, the 3.2 million, you cross-reference that back against the other sheet, you have the 3.2 million. So what we're doing is we're beginning to analyze the data and the expenditure of it. But what's very important is we're now able to take from the first page where the money was allocated for each community. So that's where I know you at some point you're gonna ask me, now you have the breakdown for the NTUA projects. We want all of the breakdown for the housing. We want all of the breakdown for the veterans housing. We want all of the breakdown for broadband. That's where we need a system that will take these and report it automatically so that if you want to know what's going on in your community, that you're able to access that at any point. So that's why we're working with all of our partners to make sure that when they get the funding, that it's broken down by community. Does that make sense? So that's what I mean by we're learning with NTUA how to track all of this stuff. So all of the stuff that we're creating here is going to eventually go over to broadband, is going to go over to all the other projects that we have in the part where the subrecipient agreements are made out. Does that make sense? So we're working on a monitoring and tracking system, but because of the amount of projects that we're going to have, we're going to need to automate this process very quickly. So I'm hoping that by the end of the year, we have that system set up. So the ad updates are provided, you'll be able to track it on your individual communities. And then that system will be set up to say, there's an update to this one. So it'll send it to the delegate, it'll send it to the LDA, and it'll send it to the community to say, there's an update. Remember kind of like the credit monitoring thing that we have down now? You know, somebody checks your credit or something, then you get a text and then you get an email, and then you get another email because everybody's doing that now. So it's going to be kind of redundant with that process that we're setting up. So we're getting better at setting up these systems that are there. The part that concerns me is this duplication of funding and how we're going to take, remember when I used to work at a grocery store, I used to work at Bastards, that was my very first job. Remember the first thing that they teach you is rotate your stock. And then the same way with on finance, you know, first in, first out. Remember how with your federal dollars, you say the one that you got in 21, you should spend that first, and then 22. We're kind of looking at it from the same angle for all of the projects that are duplicated funding. So that's where if you guys can help us get this information, somebody at the tribe has that information. And my opinion is it should be either at controller's office or at OMB, where we collect all of these together to say, these are all the projects that are funded out there. So as we're learning more about this, and again, we're working with NTUA, we're having them pull some stuff that says all of these ones are there. So does that make sense? So when we look at it collectively, we have a true picture of where we are in the capital investments on what we need to improve on the Navajo Nation. Then we have to take that information, filter it back against the ARPA side of it. So we make sure that if that money is already there and that's not being spent, perhaps we should take this money back out now so that they can spend this one first, so this can be reappropriated to other projects. Does that make sense? So that's kind of what I have to report. The rest of it, you can read on your own. We did include on page, and Arnold's the one that does these reports, so he's our numbers cruncher. If you look at page 10 of 11, we have now crossed the second box down, the overall expenditure rate. We're now at 1,076,551,709.1, which is I'm sorry, 1,002,909,754.51, which is the total encumbered. So we've crossed the 1 billion mark. So we're moving things around. Just so you're aware, the contract for 150 million with NECA is now sitting at OMB. So once that's encumbered, then that's another 150 million. So we'll be sitting at about 1.2 million dollars out of the whole $2 billion that'll be there. So we're moving things along on that side as well. The one part that we're trying to really work with is we have to work collaboratively with community development to track the number of projects that are at the chapter level. So when you look at this, the blue is the administrative, the green is the CARES funded, the red is the expenditure report. Everything that's in purple, and I believe that's why Mr. Drake is going to be providing the report on how we need your help to streamline that process so that we can get the money to them. What I'm afraid is going to happen is once we reconcile what's already sitting out there, reconcile it against the ARPA expenditure side and reconcile it against the chapter, some of those chapter projects look like they've already been funded elsewhere. So those will need to make a decision on whether we're going to keep those there or are we going to move them out and reallocate those dollars. So you were correct, Madam Chair. We need those numbers so that we can get informed decisions on these other ones there. So we are getting there though. All right. The other one is I gave you an update on personnel for the positions that are there. We are again going to be having a meeting on the 26th to discuss all of this stuff. There is a Mr. McKay initiative for the enterprise system thing. So we're going to try to pitch it to him that we can't wait 1.5 years for the personnel portion of it. So we will be having those discussions with him to see if we could expedite that to the front and then merge it into the other processes later. Because we do have vacancies. The vacancies, the way that OMB taught me is, remember all the federal dollars that we get? We can't put the indirect costs on those, so those are expended. So when you look at all of your budgets, those ones, we need to fix the personnel issue quicker than we had anticipated. Because those ones, once you start getting the hires into the contract ones, then you'll start generating the indirect costing, which will stabilize kind of our spending. But we need to find a way, and we are working with Debbie on it. We are working with Mrs. Woody over at DPM on it. So hopefully we can get to that process. Now, this one here is all of the NTUA project things broken down by community. So when you get a chance to look at this, once we get this verified and we'll work out with them, then we'll start uploading all of these together. So the worksheet that I did for Mr. Brigade the last time, those ones we will have available probably within the next 1.5 months for all of the projects across Navajo for every individual chapter that's out there. So that's going back to the reporting process unit that needs to be set up so we can track each one of those individually. So you'll be able to say from this date to this date, this is how much was spent. And from this date to this date, this is how far we moved that cheese to get this project done. I'm sorry, I speak really fast, but I'm still trying to adjust to all of that stuff. So take some time to read through it. We are going to try to do this on a monthly basis now that we kind of have an idea of how to set these ones up. But the one that we really should spend some time with is this one here. So if there's other projects that are coming up, I know everybody has an initiative of, you know, it's kind of like when I worked at Legislative Services. The Navajo Times person came to interview me once, and their question to me was, in your opinion, what's the most important legislation? And I said, all of them, because somebody took time to introduce it. It's kind of like all of the people that are on this list, which of these projects is the most important? And that's where somewhere between legislative and the executive, they need to come to a decision that these are the projects that we want to fund for these. We kind of did it in reverse previously. We kind of like, this is the list that's there, but we never really sat down and looked the whole wall. These are all of the eligibility determinations that are out there. And the legislative and executive, let's agree on a list and then run the legislation through on it. Because all of everything has changed. All of the appropriations that happened up to this point have had amendments that happened off of the council floor to appropriate it. So you need to take a look at this part of it. so that we consider everybody that's actually taking the time to submit a proposal for off-funding. Madam Chair, I believe that's my report.
Committee members, do we have a motion to accept today's report? Vice Chair Slater, motion, do we have a second to accept today's report? Okay, as a second to motion to accept today's report, do we have any questions for the, Mr. Professor today? Chair Slater.
Mr. Booker, can you explain again why there's the discrepancy in the last few pages and the front page? On the next sheet, just choose the packet. Just say like, on the NQA one. Okay, it says like 615 or something, or 18. It's- I still didn't quite grasp why this is $246 million. And this is 312 million, and then they're considering actual differences.
Yeah.
And then you were saying everything's been paid out. At least when saying pending disbursement. Is that just because this is dated September 30th information? Street fair.
If you look at the top of the EPA report, it has 630 on there. That's their last update. So I use their data. And then if you look back on the first page, we'll take a look at that centralized water, the 333 or 33,000. That is number 12 on the first page. So as of September, the 16 million have been processed on that. That one we made an error when we processed the original subrecipient agreement. We had processed it for 3,675,338 when the correct number was 33 million. So we had to process an amendment to increase it by another $30 million. Then once the 30 million correction was processed, then the payment for the 16 million was processed, and that was the last one that was paid out. So the discrepancy is that I wanted to use their report so that it's self-reporting, but their report is from 630 and our report is from 718. It's kind of like the question that you guys have, why is your report different from the one that's coming from the controller? FMIS updates in real time. So the FMIS report that I would have generated at 2 o'clock yesterday and a transaction processed overnight, what I processed at 10 this morning, they will not be the same because FMIS updates in real time. So this Delegate Slater is the difference in the information that's there. We'll update all of this one at the end of this month. NTUA will be submitting their quarterly report, and then we'll update this one that should be more reflective of the numbers alike. Madam Chair.
Okay, so thank you. Vice Chair Slater, any other follow-up questions?
Not right now.
Okay. Wait, members, any other questions for Mr. Becerra? Okay.
Sorry. In that NTUA fund report, or I guess, could you show me where the DCD water projects are in this whole thing? Is it in this first front one? Do you have it broken down by the like specific project?
ECD, which water projects are?
Which project? The well in Saley or Black Rock? I didn't see the NTUA one, but I understood the NTUA was that was going to be in the first drawdown, and so. I was just saying.
That the Saley project?
Yeah. It's in here, it's in here, but.
I apologize, Ms. Delegate Slater, I can't find it at the moment.
Okay, yeah, I mean, I have other stuff that specifically just for that one. For the committee with my question.
Thank you, Mr. Gutierrez. And Mr. Gutierrez, you mentioned the meeting on September 29th. Is that for the 25th? Is that
We'll be meeting with all of the funding recipients and going through the status of where they are and the possibility of if they're not going to be able to spend all of their dollars.
Thank you for making that announcement, Mr. Gutierrez. Do we have any further questions on the report?
You said 29th, I think you said 27th.
What's the invite?
Second call for any questions on the thing today? Oh, sorry, Ms. Macker.
Thank you, Madam Chair, the members of the committee. Let's review your report a little bit. Can you send it to me? And I noticed that, for example, on page 2, the very top one here, it says that we had additional information requested September 24th, 2021. Most of those requests once, that's been like 2 years out now, and that you've asked, or DOJ has requested additional information. What becomes of those projects? At what time are you looking at maybe saying, no more projects? But just still the ones that you thought, if their paperwork isn't completed, or I'm not sure what your answer is.
Thank you, Ms. Macker. I think that will probably be discussed at the September 26th meeting. But I'll turn the time over to Mr. Gutierrez.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, if you look at the on that page 2, you see that 2.9 million, the one right below it, number 13, that was actually deemed eligible on 10/14/2021. So that was completed. So each time that they send it back, it gets a new HK number.
Oh,
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So it's a system that DOJ uses. We don't question it. We just take their data and just clean it up a little bit. But you are correct. There are duplicates in some of these. There was one, the equine project, I think that went through 2 or 3 times. The sawmill project, I think went through like 2 times. So there's different projects where people try to do it. If you remember under BFS 3121, you're allowed to resubmit it, and if it's still not determined, then it drops off, and then you have to start the process all over. I believe that's the process that's used under BFS 3121.
Thank you, Mr. Gutierrez. Thank you for the clarification. This is our call for inspection on the report today. Here none, we shall continue with a vote on the exception of the votes.
Next on Madam Chair, we'll call rules on accepting the report. Well, is there any vote?
Right.
Thank you, Mara. Is there any vote? I'm not understanding what comment vote. Thank you to the, I'm not understanding what comment experience. I'm looking for any vote. Thank you, I will say getting the green. I will pass the heavy vote.
Green.
Thank you, I will pass the green. Madam Chair, I have one other voting in favor of your opposing 102, Madam Chair, voting Madam Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Southern. That motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Chair, for your update today. And we look forward to September 26th. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, we're gonna move on to item. Status of unmet need allocations and other committed funds not utilized. I did not really with the internet. And we've gone and they, I believe. Yes, we did have Mr. Murray also, but this as well. So Mr. McKay, welcome.
Not keep signing that on.
Working. Thank you, Madam Chair, Parish, and members of the budget, 25th Budget and Finance Committee. Thank you, Gehat. That's a, so to start, we have, we did just distribute a memo, which we hope answers the questions that were being posed to us regarding unmet need status and committed funds that aren't being utilized. So I'll go through the memo, kind of identify what we have, and then obviously open it up to the floor. Any questions? I had Mr. Willie here with me today. Him and I met on this memo before it was signed. And I asked him to be here just in case there were questions on others that he could pull up rather quickly on his laptop. So again, thank you. So to start, the unmet needs allocations, as you all know, was approved at your council meeting September 5. We are waiting for the president to sign those into law. But in transparency, I know there's a lot of questions right now about those, and we're going through some, I think, some relooks on those that we'll be meeting with the president and getting information to his team shortly. I couldn't really comment on what the thought process is at this time, as we're just now starting that. So hopefully here in the coming days, and Mr. Mitchell or Mr. Sandoval might be better to answer or comment on you know, what might happen with, you know, any vetoes or other changes to the budget going forward, especially considering the unmet needs. In the budget, as we indicate in the memo, there are 67 unmet needs funded with personnel lapse, and then an estimated and 18 unmet needs funded with a permanent trust fund income. So it should be kind of noted again, kind of the way we noted during the budget process, that keep in mind the way we currently do our budget. We're looking at needs that are funded through personal lapse and permanent fund trusts this year. That's going to carry forward into the budget next year. So just kind of putting it in the back of your, kind of filing it away in your back of your minds for now. When we go into the budget process for next year, just remember that we always base our budget for the upcoming fiscal year based on the prior one. But 67 of the unmet needs and 18 were met, were funded by personal lapse and permanent fund trust. So that's going to roll over into the next year. So if we do continue to base our budgets on the prior year budget, keep in mind we're going to have that funding lapse again, creating another unmet needs for next year that we'll have to consider. I think that's what we have documented for the unmet needs part of the memo. Are there any questions on that so far? Do you want me to go through the whole thing and then ask questions? Okay. So going into the other committed funds not being utilized, and this basically our understanding was to give the Honorable Budget and Finance Committee an idea of monies that we have received but have yet to be set up in FMIS or otherwise committed. And to start with, we have the San Juan River Mitigation Fund. It has been set up with an FMIS and it was approved. One of the ones I know that we were asked about before was the COVID donation that happened in, I think, 2 years ago. There's still 4.759 million available on that fund. I think we spent roughly 4.4 of it. We had a budget of 8 point some million. We spent about half of it, and there's about half of it left, around 4.7 million. 4.759 million.
And that has yet to be really considered. I mean, I think we just kind of stopped it when the last administration ended, and now there's still available 4.759 million available for the COVID-19 donation. Sihassin still has a number of projects which have been funded but not yet expensed. There's also pending approved resolution, and the budgets still have to be set up to be utilized. Sihassin is interesting because there's a number of projects that have been discussed and otherwise approved that have not yet been either set up, or expenditure plans or other things haven't been executed yet. So there's still a pot of money in Sihassin, but a lot of it is still committed to projects that, you know, still have carried over from, you know, some time now. So I think we do have I saw a breakdown of that. We can supplement this memo with a breakdown of those projects in Sihassin. The Gaming Revenue Distribution Fund has a balance of 13.94 million as of July 31st, 2023, that has yet to be utilized. This one is another one where, you know, there's monies available in it. I know in our investment committee meetings with NNGE, considering their proposed term sheet, they haven't contributed to this fund since 2021. But there's still a pot of money there that I know originally was set aside for chapter use. That still sits there today, around 13.9 million. We do have the capital outlay match fund, which is funded by $2 million set aside each year. The fund balance there is 5.184 million as of July 31st. Purpose of the capital outlay match is to establish a ready source of funds to meet matching requirements associated with grants, with capital outlay type grants. So although there's 5.1 million available there, it is committed or restricted to matching funds for capital outlay grants that we receive. We do have the economic development sales tax. This fund has a balance of 22.9 million. And these funds, I'm not sure, is there a fund plan for that, or?
I believe
Yeah, there's also
5-year plan they're trying to process for that.
Okay. And in the road fund, there's 15.726 million. And was available to allocate to projects, the last funding year was in fiscal year 2021. I do believe that those are set aside for road type projects, but also monies that are that we have, but have yet to be set up or otherwise utilized. And then the Navajo Nation received 6.5 million at the end of June 2023 for capital project outlay projects within the Navajo Nation from the state of Arizona. These have yet to be set up in FMIS, and we kind of had to do this one because the state of Arizona is threatening to take the money away if we didn't just take it. They were basically just wanting us to take it. So we made the decision to get the money in the bank, and we'd figure out the FMIS part later. Before monies were expended from that. This money is set aside for, I think, 4 specific projects. So while it's there and has yet to be set up, it's still money that we can't really, it's been committed to projects in the state of Arizona. I think that's the conclusion of the memo that we drafted for you on the funds that we could identify. Probably the big number where there's going to be some questions is Sihassin. And there is a fund balance there. I think it's 16 million uncommitted, if I'm right. But there's still a number of projects that sit within Sihassin that have been approved. And we have a pretty large fund balance there, but I believe it's 16 million is committed toward projects that have not yet started. Sorry, it's 100. Oh, I lost the 0. It's 150 million. That's unallocated. I thought it was 160, but I said 16. And actually, Robert has this is the document I saw. There's the big projects that are committed that still have balances are the Ganado Fire District, 2.6 million. There's 49 million in CD 5322, which is Mariano O. Jaito. Shanto Mountain. It was a designation by council. Anyway, we'll get this, there's a financial that we can get to, we can email right now that has all the projects that have a fund balance, but it has some and projects that haven't yet to be spent in that. But the unallocated balance of citizens right around 150 million. And I think that's it for our presentation, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. McDavid. Committee members, do we have a motion to accept today's report? Speaker Dino, do you have a second for the report? Vice Chair Slater, second from Wiseman. Committee members, do you have any questions for Mr. McDavid or Mr. Lloyd? Vice Chair Slater?
Thank you. Can you email me the, the term of the inflows into the economic development sales tax fund? We'll have like 5 or 10 years.
Sure.
And as economic development starting, you gotta do that.
We can definitely get that out to you. We have not spoken to DED about any of that yet. However, being a former DED director, I know that is money that's a portion from the 6% sales tax that goes into the fund. There is a 5-year plan for it. So we might want to get that to you as well, or suggest getting that from Director Scalone.
Thank you, Mr. McDavid. Committee members, do you have any other questions on the report today? Vice Chair Slater?
Thank you. Did they, or has DED mentioned anything about doing any bond issuance with the sales tax fund?
Thank you, Doug, or Vice Chair Slater, for the question. I have heard chatter about it, but nothing formal.
Committee members, other questions on the report today? Second call for questions. Third call. Hearing none, Johnson, can you do a follow on the first of the report today?
Yes, Madam Chair, the report of the
Great.
Okay, thank you,
Here.
thank you, member excuse me, I'm trying to check.
Thank you, Ms. Alvin. Thank you, Mr. McDavid, and Mr. Leonard. We look forward to the email, the $150 million. Thank you.
And we'll send other details too that we have. Yeah.
Great. Thank you, Mr. McDavid. Thank you, Mr. Lloyd. One item, which is new item C, IDSP contract and others in agreement implementation for the project. Our presenters today is Mr. Taylor Jameson from the Division of Community Development. Colleagues, the report and the IDIQ contract to the streamlining of auditor codes, the streamlining of budget setup are all related. So Ms. Draper is gonna walk us through the challenges the Division of Community Development is having with the IDIQ contract and for the secretary agreement in regards to drawdowns or uses of the dollars. We're going to update the company, then we'll get into the details of the Jake here in the FRF office, and then also Mr. McDavid on discussions that the Office of the Controller and the Office of Management and Budget are having about the reporting process. So welcome, Ms. Sheila Draper. Thank you for being with the budget finance.
Good morning, Madam Chair. Good morning, committee members. Thank you for having us this morning to report on our challenges that we are encountering with the subrecipient agreement with the certified chapters that are requesting to draw down their funds. They've sent the presentation into your email addresses, and the presentation is available in your email. We are further updating our website to include our information that we're presenting today to make sure that's also available for the virtual attendees that are joining us virtually. And within the presentation, the subrecipient agreement for the LGA certified chapters, we're requesting to get written statements from the LGA chapters that are requesting to enter into a subrecipient agreement to draw down their ARPA funds that were approved under the delegate region expenditure plans. The subrecipient agreement was amended on August. There were amendments made to the subrecipient agreement on August 29th, 2023. The changes that were made were to Article 14, the single audit, and the previous template that we released during our outreach sessions to the 110 chapters. Article 14 stated reserved, and as of August 29, 2023, the Department of Justice, our EDCU attorney, updated the subrecipient agreement to include the single audit. There were 2 items added to Article 14 under the single audit. A, the Single Audit Act applies to the expenditures of Navajo Nation Fiscal Recovery Funds subrecipient shall have a single audit performed by an independent external auditor if it exceeds $750,000 or more dollars of Navajo Nation Fiscal Recovery Funds in 1 calendar year. The second item added under Article 14, single audit B, subrecipient can use the 2% administration costs allocated in Section 10 of this agreement to pay for the single audit. Those were the 2 additional languages that were added to the subrecipient agreement. Our team at DCD ARPA, we are tasked to go back out and outreach to the LGA chapters and educate the LGA chapters of the new language that's added in the SRA agreement. Furthermore, within the subrecipient agreements that are currently in process, we are in 164 reviews, not passing the Office of the Controller's Office with sufficient reviews due to the object code. The object code that we should utilize to process the ARPA funds to the LGA's chapter's bank account. There's not a consensus on what object code that we should be utilizing to process the drawdowns to the chapter's bank accounts, the LGA chapter's bank accounts. And for that reason, it's halted our processing for the subrecipient agreements for the LGA chapters. Until we can get that determination on which object code we should utilize to draw down the funds to the LGA chapters, it will halt our processing for future subrecipient agreements to the LGA chapters for ARPA funds. The second item, are there any questions on the subrecipient agreement before moving on to the work order process?
We'll go through the report and then the committee will motion and entertain a second and open it to review discussion.
Okay. Next, the work order process with the non-certified chapters, the Division of Community Development. We've completed a solicitation in March of 2022. We solicited for an indefinite delivery and indefinite quantity firm that will assist the Navajo Nation with architectural, engineering, and project management support. Our RFP number 2022-DCD-02 was solicited in the Albuquerque Journal on March 24th, 2022, in the Gallup Independent on March 26th, 2022, the Navajo Times on March 31st, 2022. In total, we have 7 responders respond to our RFP, and we completed an internal rating evaluations on the firms. The 4 firms that solicited were priority 1 firms Those were the 4 priority 1 firm proposals that were open first. And the 4 firms did meet the minimum qualifications. And the 4 firms that were selected to provide the architectural engineering project management support for the Navajo Nation are ENUBA from Farmington, New Mexico, Indigenous Design Studio plus Architecture from Albuquerque, New Mexico, Lamb Corporation from Gallup, New Mexico, and Johnson Smithy Pond and Roseman Associates from Tucson, Arizona. The 4 firms, we have issued a notice to proceed to the 4 firms on August 18, 2023 this year. We had a notice to proceed meeting at the Twin Arrows Resort and Casino, where the firms were handed off resolutions of the CJY 41-21, the BFS 31-21, and the CJN 2922, along with their assignments to each of the 24 delegate regions. The work orders for the 24 delegate regions have been sent out to the 4 firms the same day we issued the notice to proceed on August 18, 2023. The firms are now tasked to contact each of their chapters that they are assigned to and begin scheduling kickoff meetings at the chapter level to begin formal introductions on the firm that will be assisting the chapter with preparing their Appendix A for ARPA funding requests and or revetting their projects to ensure that their projects that were approved under the delegate region expenditure plans will meet the 9/30/2026 completion date. If the projects are not going to be completed by the 9/30/2026 date, the firms are tasked to provide the chapters the support and timeline of what a project of that magnitude that their normal timeline would usually entail if it's exceeding the 9/30/2026 deadline dates. Each of the firms have tasked 1 kickoff meeting with each of the chapters, followed by 1 field investigation visit where they will conduct assessments with the chapters on their project, followed by 5 in-person visits to the chapter, in-person meetings to get their projects significantly advanced through public solicitation, through selection, award, and construction. The last meeting, 1 closeout meeting for each of the chapters with their firm. We have attended thus far 5 kickoff sessions. We've attended 2 in Delegate Davis District. And there are future schedules that are being scheduled with our ARPA team with Mr. Ryan Begay, Donnell Begay, and Mr. Edwin Begay. Our team members are working with each of the firms to schedule those mini kickoff sessions and coordinating with the chapters. And we are in turn adding those onto our DCD ARPA calendar on our DCD website. So the chapters are aware of when their kickoff sessions with the firms will be. And we are further releasing schedules under each of the delegate region plans onto the DCD website as well. That concludes my update this morning on the overview of the subrecipient agreement and the DCD indefinite delivery, indefinite quantity IDIQ work orders that we have issued to the 4 firms. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Draper. Committee members, do you have a motion to accept today's report?
Motion.
Speakers at the room. Motion to the report. Do you have a second? Delegate Leonardo Osborne, second motion. Committee members, do you have any questions for Ms. Draper? Delegate Osborne.
Madam Chair, I got a question to share. Thank you for your report.
I don't want to check it, but already gone out and consulted and it's up. It's not any of the. One. They're still there.
Ms. Draper? Want to answer, maybe repeat your question one more time?
Yeah, the question is, one of my chapters. Have already gone out. And they go on, actually two of them. And I'm just wondering if that's okay. The one that you got.
Yes, that's okay. If the chapter solicited for their own consultants at the chapter level, that is okay, yes.
Yeah, a follow-up question maybe is, they can use our.
Yes, they can use ARPA funds at the local level to hire a consultant, yes.
Okay, the other question, follow-up on that is, they have to go through the hiring process. Individuals, you guys a consultant, or they have to basically go through the nomination hiring process. Or that process.
With at the local level, the chapter, they can prepare their expenditure plan for the consultant. Get that approved, eligibility determinations approved through the DOJ unit. And then once you sign that project into law, they can then proceed with hiring the consultant. Either at the local level, or they can utilize the IDIQ.
Ms. Draper. Anyone, or do you have any other questions? That's all for questions. There's all. Hearing none, Ms. Nelson, can we do a follow-up to the report today?
This I'm sure we'll something we reports. Is there any vote? I mean, thank you, or is there any or I'm sorry, any vote? Or I'm is not part of any vote. Thank you, today, I'm not part of this meeting. David, have you vote? David, have you vote? So we've got.
Oh, I vote green.
Thank you, David was green. Have you vote?
Great.
Thank you, was green. Madam Chair, there are 4 members voting in the affirmative or opposing. Madam Chair, not voting on the excuse, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Nelson. Already, so that the motion carries, and thank you, Ms. Draper, for your time this morning to provide that outline for the next discussion report. Thank you, Ms. Draper. Our next report is object codes at the office of the controller in regards to cybersecurity and the FRF. By presentation beginning by Mr. John. Welcome, Mr. McKay.
Thank you. So, thank you again, Madam Chair, members of the Budget and Finance Committee. So.
Related to the picture, right?
Yeah. So, thank you again, Madam Chair, members of the committee. So thank you for the opportunity to talk a little bit about what the Office of the Controller is proposing for the subrecipient agreements. And I think it's taken on a new urgency just because, so far, the bulk of the ARPA funds that have been spent have been on hardship, and we're just now starting to get into some of the actual projects that ARPA was set aside for. And within those projects are subrecipient agreements that I think we all need to be on the same page on with what that means and how they're administered. And so I scheduled a meeting with members of OMB, DOJ, and the president's office, and I do believe I invited BNF if they wanted to be there. It was supposed to be yesterday, but it didn't get out in time, so we're having it tomorrow morning at the office of the controller. And really, we had a conversation with Mr. Rodas and Catherine from DOJ, myself and Christine Chavez, and just hearing the comments this morning, and really the conversations that are starting to happen over subrecipient agreements, and what is again looking like delays in getting the monies out. I wanted to bring those groups together to figure out a way on how we can streamline getting money out to the chapters. As you all know, we're up against the deadline, and in a sense, we're giving an unprecedented amount of supplemental fundings to chapters that, and we're putting administrative requirements on them that they haven't really had to deal with before, namely the single audit that will be required for any chapter that spends $750,000 or more in federal funds in a given fiscal year. So to give you a little bit of background, that led to the conversation that I had with DOJ and the contracted county last week. We had a meeting a few months back, an ARPA meeting in the hangar. And they started talking about the monies that were set aside for chapters and how that was going to work through the subrecipient agreements. And I know Tom Platero's office has worked very hard to figure out the approval process for the SRAs. But what I don't know has been addressed yet is the OOC side of it, and then what our responsibilities are for subrecipient monitoring. And so in closing out the fiscal 2020 audit with John Kennedy, I asked him, you know, when it comes to monies that we're giving the chapters through the allocations that were given to each delegate, you know, are they going to be responsible for their own single audit? And he said, yes, that any subrecipient will have the responsibility of adhering to the federal compliance requirements and through the single audit. And really the Navajo Nation's only real requirement for monies that are sent to the chapters is the subrecipient monitoring piece, which is also a compliance requirement. And so in essence, what that means is for all the money that we give to subrecipients, those monies will be audited at the subrecipient level, not the nation level. So whatever money we send to NTUA or the chapters or other subrecipients, they're the ones that will be responsible for the proper compliance and administration of the funds. Our responsibility is going to be to monitor them so that we can assure the federal government that they spend the monies for the purpose that we gave it to them for. And one of the areas I don't think we've properly set up yet, or maybe could use some improvements, is in our subrecipient monitoring process. And so that's what led to my meeting with DOJ a few days ago, saying, you know, let's figure out a way to streamline this, and particularly the object codes that are being used, because for some reason my office likes to nitpick these object codes. And what happens, and in fact, it happened in the meeting we were on, my team pulled up an example of a chapter and budget form 3 didn't match budget form 1. And I said, well, what would we do? And they said we would send it back. And as you all know what that means, it adds days, if not weeks, into a process that should just be automatic. And so really the main proposal I want to talk about tomorrow for the subrecipient to the certified chapters. Understand this applies to the certified chapters that have subrecipient agreements, that we use one code for all subrecipient agreements. And there's two reasons for it. One, it streamlines the process. And we learned that the only reason why we assign these object codes is so that Dominic and his team can set up the budgets and FMIS. So giving Dominic one option, which we'll discuss with him tomorrow, saying all subrecipient agreements to chapters utilize this one code for the object code. And forgive me, I don't remember the number, but the name of it is, it's like grants awarded. Because in essence, that's what we're doing. We're giving these monies to the chapter to spend in line with their approved expenditure plans, et cetera. And what that eliminates is us having to set up the budgets in FMIS. And the reason why we have to do it that way is, and really all we're doing is we're writing one check to the chapter. So let's say a chapter gets $1 million. In FMIS, it shows they were going to spend it on consulting, say, personnel and whatever, capital outlay, those three. So those three budget codes would be sitting on our side. When we write the check, we would have to charge those three items. In our general ledger, it would show up like we were spending it on consulting, capital assets and personnel, when in fact, we gave it to the chapter for them to spend on capital assets, personnel and consulting. And so in order to keep the universe of expenditures correct for the audit purposes, we don't want it to make it appear that we were the ones expending or administering this money, when in fact it was the chapters through a subrecipient agreement. So all monies that'll go to chapters from now, and what's being proposed and discussed tomorrow, is there'll be one code used set up in FMIS. When we write the check, that one budget code will be charged, and it'll be exactly what it should be, which is a grant or other award to a chapter. Then what we're gonna do is we're developing a single form that all SRAs will use for us to fulfill our subrecipient monitoring responsibility. It'll be either a 1 or 2 page document that will show their budget, because I know Mel Rodas, who's sitting behind me, had concerns, rightly so, that we need to still be able to monitor their budget and see what they're spending the money on. And so since we're only using one object code on our side, we'll send them a form where we'll list out, say, 10 to 15 different cost classifications, have them report their budget on that. And then every quarter or every month, we can monitor by having them report to us what actual is, and we can compare budget to actual. And this, so if you read the federal compliance requirement for subrecipient monitoring, it simply states that any primary awardee that's awarding funds under subrecipient agreements must set up policies and procedures so that we adequately monitor subrecipients for compliance with federal requirements. So right now, the Office of the Controller believes by setting up a budget form that they can use for these funds under subrecipient agreements and report periodically on budget to actual, we'll be able to monitor their spending and make sure that they're spending it for the reasons that they were awarded the monies. All of this shouldn't die as an effort, A, to strengthen the subrecipient monitoring responsibilities that we have, and B, just make it simpler so that we don't go through this back and forth of, well, you budgeted consultants, but you charge, architects, you need to go back and redo it. And we all know that's a problem over there. So, and also we're trying to make sure the universe for audit of expenditures for chapters is correct in that it's not for budgeted reasons. It's really give to the chapters for the reasons that they got their expenditure plan approved for. And I believe, and in talking with John Kenny, that this will satisfy our subrecipient monitoring responsibility, but it'll also give us a tool to monitor the chapters. And most importantly, it'll hopefully streamline this process, as Ms. Draper mentioned. She's waiting for an object code from us, and we're hopefully going to establish that tomorrow. And I think a lot of you understand. I think a lot of you understand just by what you're hearing in the meetings you're having that the process is starting to slow things down. And we all know we're up against the deadline, and we all know the chapters need this money. So this is just an effort to try and streamline that and get those resources out to the chapters sooner than later. Because the other thing we need to very much keep an eye on is the monies that are actually being spent. Once it's written to the chapter, our responsibility of giving it to the subrecipient has been fulfilled. However, if the chapter doesn't spend it in the time frame it's allocated, we're going to have to give it back. So we want to make sure we're monitoring that so that we don't get ourselves in that kind of a position. So that Shinata is my report on what we're hopefully going to get approved tomorrow, or at least on the same page. And then we'll develop the budget form that it'll be one uniform document that the chapters can utilize, or even all SRAs, because we actually had a meeting with NTUA last week, and they were asking for the same type of document. They want to know how they report to us. And the last thing we want to do is try to figure out how their chart of accounts matches our object codes, because they won't match. And then we're going to get into a big back and forth. So putting together a uniform reporting document back to the nation for all subrecipient agreements will hopefully make that easier for all chapters and other subrecipients, and also fulfill our responsibility for monitoring those subrecipient grant awards. And I believe that's it.
Thank you, Mr. McCabe, Vice Chair, Senior motion to accept today's report. Do you have a second to the motion? Delegate Lombardo, Osgood, second the motion to accept the report on the streamlining object of the alphabet controller. For that, for applications. Committee members, do we have any questions for Mr. McCabe? For the record, we also have Delegate Norman. Vice Chair Slater?
Thank you. You didn't hand out a written report of this, right?
No, that is. I can't.
Summarize it. And then for the record, don't get to anything, I do not hand out pastries of which I could not have. I didn't really want to do them, so they could have been sitting here all weekend. I have no idea. So I thought I'd say for the testing of the delegates. Thank you for giving them to our people here.
And typically, tomorrow, the records of the meetings, what time, I mean,
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think it's set for 9 in my office, one of the conference rooms. Yeah, I'm sorry. There's one thing I didn't mention, that the proposal I just spoke about will be for SRAs, which apply to certified chapters only. The process will actually remain the same for non-certified chapters, because those will be administered through DDs or DCD. And they'll have to follow the same procedure as far as budget, object codes, et cetera. But for the SRAs that are certified and have their own systems of accounting, it'll be one object code. We can get those up to go.
thank you, Mr. McCabe, for clarifying that. Do we have any questions for the controller on development? Second call for questions. Third call. Hearing none, Ms. Nelson, can we do a roll call vote to accept today's report?
Yes, Madam Chair, we'll call roll on something the report, more effort, Hollywood. Thank you, more effort, cleaning. I'm looking at that, probably any good. Thank you, I don't know, I'm looking at that, I don't know, I'm getting any vote. Thank you, I'm not going to open the screen, I'm looking at any vote. Thank you, I'm looking at the meeting, I will call Slater and the vote. Thank you, I will call Slater and the meeting, I'm telling you, 500 votes in the permit for closing. So I'm trying to really answer.
Thank you, Ms. Nelson. Thank you, Mr. McCabe. Thank you, Taylor. Thank you. All right. We are going to move to, we have 2 more reports before we consider legislation. The next report is going to be from Mr. Arnold J. from the FRF office, also on updating the committee on the challenges the FRF office is having with the budgeting process in reporting the budgets to the Navigation Council. And so Mr. Arnold J has some suggestions, and thank you, Mr. J, for your time this morning. The floor is
Okay, thank you, Chairperson and President Finance Committee. I do have a report I want to hand out. So please.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. There are two reports. One you're probably familiar with, this is the one we update every 2 weeks. And we track the expenditure levels and the business units set up. And if you notice, the first 2 pages have all the allocations for the departments, and then the rest of the report, which is 6 pages, are the chapter projects. So the chapter projects take up the bulk of the reports. And I think we have 319 projects that have been approved. Of those, we still have about 114 that need to be set up through OMB. And that's, I guess that's the part of the process that you've asked me to talk about streamlining that process. Before we get to that, though, there's a second report which we've developed and we're using to monitor the chapter projects that have been approved. So what we've done with this report is we broke it down by agency, chapter, and then we listed all the projects under that chapter. And then, unfortunately, the report has it set up where there's the first part of it, the blue part, are the LGA certified chapters. And then the second half of the report are the ones that are chapters that aren't certified. And like Mr. McCabe said earlier, the chapters that are not certified really don't have a choice of which way they're going to go. Their oversight authority, or the program that has been designated as their oversight authority, will administer the funds and the project on behalf of along with the chapter. So on those, it's pretty straightforward how to proceed. It's the projects that have been approved for the LGA certified chapters where we run into some little issues because they have choices on how they want to proceed. They can either do a subrecipient agreement and have the funds transferred to them, where they administer the funds in the project, or they can have their oversight authority administer the projects. So because of that choice, it's difficult to make that determination up front, whether the business unit is going to be set up with just one object code, like Mr. McKay was saying, or if it's going to be set up with all the object codes. So without making that determination up front, it's hard to set up the business unit without knowing that. And maybe, I guess we're going to address that at tomorrow's meeting. So on this report, what we wanted to show with this report is the number of projects that have administrative oversight programs that are not DCD. And if you look to the right of the report, you'll see the columns of the departments that have been designated as administrative overseers, I guess we want to call them. And the bulk of it, probably 95% of those projects are under DCD. But there are projects that are related to water, that are related to EPA, broadband, economic development, NDOT, and even Division of Health. So those programs have also been designated as administrative oversight for those projects that are related to what they do. And by the way, the way that's determined is when the project is first proposed in this whole process, it has to go through the DOJ for initial eligibility determination. And so DOJ makes that call, and then they provide a form. And on that form, they not only let us know if the project is eligible based on the criteria of the feds, but they also designate who the oversight authority is going to be, administrative oversight, and they designate the expense category code that the federal government uses. So that document is really important for us because that's where we get the information to determine who's the oversight authority. And so the plan has been that DCD staff will work with the chapters if they're going to go SRA, if they're going to go with their division, and the plan is for our office to work with the non-DCD projects. So I've been concentrating on those, and there's some questions that are lingering out there on things like whether the IDIQ contracts are available to those administrative programs. So some of those questions will be brought up tomorrow and hopefully addressed tomorrow. But and we'll continue with this report. Of course, I'll probably update it every 2 weeks when we update the overall report. But this one right here is just to let you know where we are. If you notice on the report for the LGA chapter certified chapters, you'll see at the very top of the first page, the green entries. Those let us know that there are subrecipient agreements in the 164 review process. That's what the green ones are. And then right in the middle, you'll see SRA in effect. Those are the subrecipient agreements that have completed the process, been signed by the president and been set up in our system. And the transmittal letter has been issued, which transmittal letter is like our way of issuing a notice to proceed. And there really are only two that have been done. The Ganado project, they received their middle letter last week, and we're in the process of doing their first disbursement of 50% of that 1.7 million, so they can proceed with their project. And then the other one is the emergency one that was approved back in May for Chinle, and you'll see that on the subsequent pages. Pages 2 and 3 have the Chinle SRA reference. So those are the only two that have completed the whole process. So we know it is possible to complete the process. And the green, like I mentioned, are those ones that are going through the 164. Now, the purple entries are the chapters that are certified LGA, but have opted to go have their projects all run by the Administrative Oversight Authority. They've informed community development either through an email.
I think, Mr. Cordero already covered, the projects earlier.
Okay,
So I think the topic of the report you're giving up, I appreciate your time and just giving the thorough report. I think this is what we were asking for earlier. But could you describe the challenges that the FRF office is experiencing with the budget? So a part of the request for today's report was to share with the committee how the legislation passed with the budget and how it gets implemented at Office of Management.
Right.
So streamlining the budgeting process.
okay. All right, I wasn't sure, I wasn't aware of Tom covering that.
We didn't cover that, right?
Okay, all right, regarding that, a good example is the first projects that were approved. There were 6 resolutions that the council, the former council, the 24th council processed, approved 6 resolutions. They were signed by the former president. There's 66 projects. So he signed off on those resolutions in early January. And it took from January all the way to April for our offices, FRF and OMB, to have those business units set up. That was almost 4 months it took. And the biggest part was the object codes, which ones to use. But there were some challenges, like, for example, OMB was asking for more justification on the budgets that had already been approved by the council and signed off by the president. And they wanted more justification included in those budgets before they would set them up. So we had to work with the chapters to try to get that. And one of the questions that I had that never got answered and still hasn't got answered was, if they were approved by the council and the president signed off on them, to me, it seems like they're already approved. The projects have already been approved. So the justification, it doesn't seem like would be necessary, the additional justification that OMB is requesting. I could understand if they were still going through the process of trying to get funding, if they needed additional justification. But when we asked OMB, they said they were using the criteria that's in the budget instructions manual. And therefore requested the information be included before they would set it up. So that was one of the problems we had. And the other one is the use of the object codes that Sean spoke to earlier. The back and forth that caused because of the uncertainty of which ones to move forward on. Those are probably the 2 major things that caused the delay. And as you can see, the 114 that were approved during the summer session, they haven't been set up yet. And I guess we're having to modify the budgets in order for OMB to accept them to set them up. So that's a question I'll be asking tomorrow of Mel and the legal team, I guess, of whether we need to comply with that requirement of it's providing additional justification. My understanding of it was that the budget that was approved as part of the council resolution is the financial plan for the project. But And for the SRAs, the ones that do get designated as SRAs, for the SRAs, we would use the one object code to. And then the chapters would use their budgeting methodology to set up their financials. So those are probably the biggest reasons why we goes back and forth, and we're still kind of in that situation because there was 114 that haven't been set up from the summer session that was approved by the council. So it's and hopefully tomorrow we'll have that reserved. I mean we'll have that resolved tomorrow, but we'll see, I guess. And the other report that I mentioned is a new report. I don't even know, did Tom present this report? Okay. Well, he must explain that then, okay. The one I provided is updated as of this morning.
Thank you, Mr.
Mhm.
Updates to the committee on, the budgeting process and the questions posed to the committee today. I know that there is a meeting tomorrow morning, this meeting, now, the president that, Mr. Thomas has made the committee aware of. So we look forward to the continued discussion. Thank you again, Mr. Dave. Committee members, do we have a motion to accept today's report? Speaker gives a motion to accept today's report. Do we have a second to the motion? Vice Chair Slater seconds the motion. Committee members, do we have any questions for Mr. Day? Second call for question. Third call. Here again, Ms. Nelson, can you do a roll call on accepting the report today?
Yes, I'm Carol Cole, Susan, start one, I mean, thank you, anyone, until this meeting, I will know in the meeting, how you vote. Thank you, I will know in the meeting, honorable, I'm looking at the planning and vote. Honorable Everton, I thought, planning. Our friend, thank you, Washington, I thought, I'm just meeting, honorable secretary, how you vote. Honorable secretary, how you vote.
Oh, I will agree.
Thank you, Honorable Secretary, will agree, Honorable Lawyer, how you vote.
Great.
Thank you, Honorable Secretary, and Chair, and my members voted in the affirmative to opposing, Madam Chair, not voting no.
Thank you, Ms. Nelson. Thank you, committee members. Thank you, Mr. Jake, for your time today for the report. We look forward to the continued conversation.
Thank you very much.
It's on the last report today is a litigation update. I see the, Deputy Attorney General here with covered law, on the report. Visitors, our Attorney General at Oak Ridge, so we're gonna welcome Ms. Heather Claw.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Vice President, or Vice Chair and Budget and Finance Committee. I'd be more than happy to give you guys an update of where we're at in the accounts on that. But according to the fund management plan, I'd ask for us to go ahead and go into executive session so I can share some of those numbers and updates with you guys. I'm sorry?
What is the topic of the discussion?
We were gonna go ahead and give you guys a report on the accounts of where they're at. That was my understanding that that's what you guys wanted to go ahead and do.
The,
This is litigation update. Attorney General's office. And I believe that. I'm like, that's really, I don't know if we do this in the committee. But, the questions today, last week. Probably, the novel is started.
I apologize, I didn't hear you.
The knowledge. From their office, recommending that, this report was requested by the attorney general. So, a lot of the, litigation around this, I believe it's done by outside attorneys and such, but.
If you wanted,
Those are all different cases that are before the nomination, and the nomination is litigated. And so, I know that, the big smoke about it earlier yesterday, and so I'm not sure. They set up another Zoom line that we can call into.
Thank you, Ms. Knocker, for that clarification. Vice Chair Slater, we got it.
Sounds like you're talking about the issue that arose during the budget process where we want to see more financial information about the fund. and how
Mhm.
it's-
Yeah, my
Well,
understanding,
it's not a litigation update, so.
right,
That's a separate request the Attorney General made. The Attorney General made a different request than what the topic you're referring to. the
Okay.
Attorney General.
Do you have it? No?
Yeah, she called, they called to me, last year. Oh, the past, I haven't had a really constructive. I know that the is busy today. He has other.
Was it a litigation update or a litigation file?
He said litigation. That was. it's in my mind.
we usually do, the Department of Justice does do a litigation update, it's a little bit more extensive. So, usually in the past, what I've noticed are, that I participated in, it usually takes like 2 days to go through different litigations and everything of that sort. It could either be here, it could be, off-site. Maybe that's some of the input that I can ask from you guys as delegates, what would you prefer? Is it something that you guys want to do subject matter so that they're in small chunks rather than a full 2 days to covering everything?
Thank you, Deputy. At this time, because the way the agenda was created was through the advisement of the Attorney General, and if the topic is not being addressed today, the committee can decide to defer the topic that the Attorney General wished to discuss with the committee, if that's what you're not prepared to talk about today.
Okay. Madam Chair, my understanding is that we were gonna go ahead and just give you an update of where our financials were. On that, and I'm prepared to go ahead and do that if you guys want to just have an understanding of where the financials are. And then we can go ahead and talk later regarding the litigation updates. So I apologize, that was my understanding. I'll defer to you.
Thank you, Deputy. Committee members, the Deputy Attorney General is prepared to talk about the financial the finances of the Department of Justice at this time, if the committee members would like.
My question is, are you talking about all? Okay, so the net litigation increased to an annual amount of general fund wise. Are you willing to give us an update on those financials? How much money is left in those, after those general funds that we give to you? Or are we talking about how much money is in the CMS?
How much?
That's my good. I get what the contingency man. Are you talking about how much money is in the CMF or what financials are we talking about? That's my question. I'm hearing.
I'm prepared to give you the cost fixed litigation amounts of money on there. Yeah, the fixed cost litigation.
Sure.
Vice Chair Slater?
I think this is just a miscommunication
Yes.
between. It's not right. No, it's not right. On what the concept of legislation, what the report was supposed to be, but we had made a request. Because of the concerns that Budget had and the other members of the committee as well. And I see this as the department fulfilling the request that we made, and we kind of issued the line frame of after the budget was passed and discussed in that. It's like, I guess I don't see the department as not having prepared a report before it exists, so there's an error, and that's why the report was standing as wrong. So I mean, I know it's really nice. I really go to executive session before we mess with it. How long do you think we'll be able to look at this issue?
It shouldn't take very long.
Say,
When you're deferring to
25
your
minutes.
25 minutes, is enough, yeah. And then if you guys have any questions, then.
Thank you, Vice Chair Slater. There's a motion on the floor to go into executive session for 25 minutes to get the report from the Department of Justice. We get the second to the motion. I can call for a second to the report in executive session. Third call for a second to the report. Go into, or the hearing report and executive session. There's all, there's, okay, there's no second to the motion on the floor. So the motion is not carried to go into executive session.
On the general funds, so the 6 pounds. Wouldn't that be something that you could do not in executive session? Or is that something that you still would like to do in executive session due to the fact that? You're worried about individuals stating like they're like all possible, I guess. Only one I know is Kudo Rock. Kudo Rock and the contract receivable, which is somewhat $1,000, but your budget cents that they have like 200,000 not in there. Are you worried that they're going to hear that and they're going to start invoicing that up to $200,000? Is that what it is, or I can understand the CMA. Oh, okay, yeah.
This council.
Yeah.
People that are.
That's CMA. Never mind. Okay.
Okay, Deputy Attorney General, you wanna respond?
Yeah, underneath the CMF account that has the vast, it directly states that any reporting on this will have to be an executive session. So that's according to the procedures. For the reasons that we said, so.
I mean, I would second, but I'm leaving right now, so I'm not seconding, so I don't want to. Hold it handcuffed and.
No, whatever you guys want to hear from me, if you guys want to hear it, that's great.
Is there any way you can afford that information, or no, you won't do that?
Yeah. But we can make arrangements on it, so there's no worries. If you guys want to go ahead and, I was just prepared to give you guys the account where we're at on that. But if you want something a little bit more expensive on that, then we can prepare for that too. So whatever you guys decide.
Thank you, Deputy Attorney General. We could also list the office of legislative counsel to work with the Department of Justice because including for the budget signing.
Absolutely.
All right.
Thank you guys. Sorry about the misunderstanding.
Thank you.
Uh-huh.
I gotta leave right now. There's a storm, giant team, today at 16, I go. But respectfully decline, even if I walk out of this room and you guys put my name in this space on Google 9-3. And if nobody wants to be on there, I respectfully say that is the duty of the chair and vice chair. To be on the committee, yeah. Hey, that's my comment, I gotta go.
No, she got a box.
Oh, there you go. Hey, guys, I gotta go.
Yeah, you want some of this back?
No, I'm okay, Jake.
You okay?
Yeah.
We're eating got one more. We got one more.
That probably we're gonna go to old business. We have no old business today. We're going to new business, which is legislation number 02923. That is a legislation sponsored by Delegate Curtis Nieto. He's currently not here.
1, 2, 3. Well, David Crowley is back. Let's go. Chair. Legislation 20923. Activated Budget and Finance Committee, appointed Budget and Finance Committee. Representatives of the POT Committee, Title II Report.
Yeah.
Sponsor Curtis Nito and Chair Parrish is not co-sponsor to represent the legislation. And can we get a vote? Can we get a second? Motion from Delegate Damon, second from Chair Parrish. Committee members, the final report is here. I just realized, it is here. So, Ms. Naka, do you want to read the legislative record or ask her to do that?
You can nominate, this is a nominate. You can nominate. Yeah, come on. Action number 029-23 and action relating to budget and that's committee of finance committee representatives. Committee. And we don't have a sign. Agent, but I just.
So you don't think we need to read this thing? Pretty wide.
Within that, the second one authority, the budget and finance committee, the standing committee of the nominations. Findings, saying that the committee of nominations, not for the staff of the community finance report. Subcommittee through resolution 23 on May 30th, 2023. Committee see if it remains that is titled to the committee to be jump over members from each now. Section 2. Section 3, appointment of budget and finance committee representatives to the committee titled 2 warrants. So. And so it goes, A, the budget and finance committee of the nomination council hereby appoint Honorable Blake to this nominating committee title to warrants. And then it shows the reference legislation for the status subcommittee and then the demo and the internet review, there's no comments. And then we do have the face page for that legislation that's signed by the person.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Nakai. I'm happy that we have the record. I don't want to come back and we gotta revisit again because most people know less than we did things right. Okay, committee members, do you desire a presentation or do you want to go straight into the picking straws?
Nomination, sure.
Okay, we are going to move into discussion on the legislation. Thank you very much, Chair Parrish, for that presentation. Delegate Brigade, you recognize, you nominate Chair Parrish. Chair Parrish, you accept? Okay.
Second.
Committee members, you know, there isn't really a protocol for this. You read the previous resolution also. So we can all signify by I'll move forward with one nomination. She accepted this first and second. There's another position open.
Nominate.
I accept. You know, you want to
We have a little committee. I'm done.
you need it, but this way, the chair and vice chair, we can just kill quorum every time.
Let's go at it. Two vote.
Okay. For my nomination.
I nominate.
Well, no, Delegate Begay nominated Chair Parrish, Delegate Azarick seconded that. And then Delegate Azarick nominated me, and Delegate Begay seconded that. Oh, that's true, you actually have to insert the name, so I can do it as a motion.
Combine.
One thing you could do is just request.
We're gonna have multiple nominations.
Do you want to vote on all this?
I'm just citing the rules, not what I want to do. You could have multiple nominations, not a motion. If that's a motion-
Yes. That's what I understood. Okay. Takes a couple steps back. Okay. You have two nominees, committee members. We do need to amend the legislation in order to fill the purpose of the legislation. So in that instance, there does need to be a request to amend the legislation. And the legislative council, if you help us out in drafting that. Whirling,
I'm sorry.
we need amendment language in order to insert Chair Parrish and myself as nominees to the Title II reform site. Excited? I've been asking for,
Somebody's got to bring.
I'll wait for this. I've been asking for a copy of. We can do whatever we want.
Nominate Trump, I'm sorry.
My friend here. Oh, you know what it? Okay, all right. Let's vote.
Our legislative council is drafting, and then you guys, one of you can offer this amendment to the legislation.
But how do you select the nominee? How do you select the nominee to the amendment?
Well, I have to put the nominations.
So there's,
Nobody said any other nominations.
right, so there's two nominees.
Yeah.
Right.
Wow. For the amendment, I asked.
Oh, to put the name,
To put two, put our two names.
okay.
Look, I'm happy to drop it. You guys, you have a mission to get in there.
No. What waste of time?
Oh. Okay,
It's like, Joe didn't.
thank you.
Yes.
You want me to make a motion before then?
Yeah, it's divided the amendment.
Send it right this minute.
Which phone? The blue one or the gold one?
That's on the left,
The blue one or the gold one?
not this one.
Oh, I don't know.
Sounds it.
Yeah, you can silence it.
The first 3 days were terrible.
Oh my gosh. You should have. Get the iPhone.
Did you send it out? Okay, committee members have sent out 12:15. I just got it. For those of you who might not have those phones, do you want me to read it? And then someone can offer this, or?
Yes, please read it. I'm not the motion.
Okay, amendment to legislation number 20923. One, on page 2, at line 2, in the first blank space, insert honorable being paired. 2, on page 2, at line 2, in the second blank space, insert honorable Carl R. Slater. Really number of letters in paragraph sections, exhibits are necessary and appropriate, the Office of Legislative Services and the Office of Legislative Counsel are authorized to make athletics and this enact exhibits to implement the council's intent. This amendment supersedes any consistent language in any other committee in the council. We have a motion from Delegate Nazareth. Is there a second to the motion? We have a second from Chair Parrish. Committee members, is there any further discussion on this amendment one? Discussion on amendment 1? Norman, do not move, we're about to vote.
No.
We're about to vote.
We're about to vote. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Make a motion.
Chair.
We can't.
Up here, Delegate Nazareth made the motion.
Carl can't
And then
vote.
Chair Parrish made the second. Okay, we're gonna move to a vote. There's no discussion. Delegate Gay, how do you vote? Green. Delegate Parrish, green. Thank you. Delegate Nazareth, green. Delegate Crowley.
Agree.
Delegate Crowley, green. And we
Well,
have
I'll
4.
turn that to red.
In opposition to the committee.
Another meeting.
Look at this. Look at this. We're gonna change the word. Okay, committee members. We have amendments to the legislation. Just better, it's. Sure. Okay, committee members, we have modifications.
Just trying to recall.
1, 2, 3. I started with Norman, I went to Chair Parish, I went to Delegate Hazard. So it's like 3, 1. 4-1. 3, 1, 1. 4-1, 3 in favor, 1 opposed, 1 not voted.
One not one.
No, not 4, 3, 1, 1.
Three, two.
No, nomination, everybody votes.
One, three, one.
Okay, even prevails.
Oh, the nomination, everybody votes because it's not a.
Oh, that actually is a thing. Isn't that? But that's when there's like. An actual legal committee, not that everybody votes.
So vote.
Are you, do you believe that's correct? I believe that's correct. That's only when you're choosing the chair, vice chair of the committee. Let's not get sidetracked here. Chair makes a decision.
It's not a virtual call, there's a.
Okay, we have the amendment.
Title II subcommittee, that could be your priority number one. That's something
We're
really,
trying to illustrate all the issues right now.
that's really important.
Okay, we're going to report, is there any further debate on the legislation? Okay, during the debate, committee members, I think we do need to do a second reading. And reading what I read. 186. One on page 2 of line 2 in the first place, insert on carriage. 2 on page 2 of line 2 in the second place, insert honorable Carl Rice later. 3, remember the paragraph section exactly as very appropriate. The Office of Legislative Services and the Office of Legislative Counsel authorized to make exhibits. Implement the council's intent is then supersedes the basis of language of the council amendments. Okay, for the members of now ready to vote on the main legislation 2 and 923 as amended. Another product, how to go?
Green.
Recognize the other product. So we're talking about
What was the date?
what was the date?
Yeah, are you on?
No, we did the amendment. Now we have to go to the main motion.
Oh, I'm sorry, yes, go ahead. I have read.
Okay, Delegate Cardi votes red, Delegate Hazard. Delegate Hazard votes green, Delegate Gay. This is a thumbs up green. Thank you. Okay,
Truly.
now we're bringing props into this.
Yeah.
Chair. Okay, Chair Perry votes green. We have 3 in favor, 1 opposed, Chair not voting.
Big night.
Congratulations, Carl Slater. This has been a dream. I have the amendments that I made last time, but that was only for the standing committee. Not for the council. Just I'm trying to get the plates. Fairly motion, strategic session. Motion by-
Okay. Thank you, members, for on the next item.
The plates.
Or which is the, I'm gonna recognize Vice Chair Slater for his motion. Scheduled for the second. Vice Chair Slater, what is the date that you're proposing? I'll open it up to discussion after.
Who's going to suggest the second week of October, I believe, and. I think there's 2 things we want to talk about, community leadership, and the second thing is delivery of the priorities that we identified. And I guess I would say Wednesday, if that's acceptable to me, well.
What's it?
October 11th. 11? 11.
Here.
The one up.
So, yeah. Are you open to other card? Oh, sorry.
Yes.
Right here. Oh, yeah, there. Are you good with the October 11th date?
So meeting on. Meeting at 10 o'clock, right? No,
9. What do you want?
not good.
9:30. 9:30. Yeah, I can leave it 8:00.
Okay, how was October 11th for
You
you?
will leave at 8:00, and then you have to leave at 6:30. So yes, it's what you're doing. Yeah.
Do you have any other obligations?
So the meeting, the day, the tenth,
There's one conference.
yeah, the board meeting was here.
That's on the tap, that's, yeah.
Can I 9:30, right? 9:30? Nine thirty or what?
Us. Yeah, 9:30,
Okay,
and then
9:30,
I'm gonna say the budget and finance committee room unless people have other areas.
9:30.
So we're good with something.
Yeah, it was.
Committee members, there's a motion on the floor for scheduling the strategic work session on October 11th, 2023 at 9:30 a.m. in the budget and finance conference room. Is there a second?
Second.
Delegate Norman Gay seconds the motion. Committee members, are there further discussion or questions on the scheduling motion? Second call. Hearing none, Ms. Nelson, can you do a roll call vote on scheduling?
Yes, I will vote on the scheduling of the strategic session. Margo Asher, how do you vote?
Green.
Thank you, Margo Asher, looks green. Arnold Norman and Gay, how do you vote?
Green.
Thank you, Arnold Norman and Gay votes green. Arnold Emerson, Body, how do you vote? Arnold Amber, can I spot party, how do you vote? Oh, whatever, agree, thank you. Thank you, Arnold Amber, can I spot party? Arnold Conslater, how do you vote?
I agree.
Thank you, Arnold Conslater, votes green. Arnold Seth Freeman, how do you vote?
Speaker Davis, excuse.
Okay, thank you. Arnold Seth Freeman is excused. Madam Chair, we have 4 members voting in the affirmative. 0 opposing, 1 member excused. Madam Chair, not voting, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Nelson. Thank you, committee members. I believe the new item under new business is also scheduling of the rescheduling of the October 17th, 2023, because it falls on fall session. So we'll have to reschedule that.
Next meeting.
Next, you want to defer it to the next meeting? Okay. Delegate Azar or Delegate Begay motions to defer the rescheduling of the October 17th meeting, and Delegate Azar second motion. Committee members, do we have any questions on the motion to defer? The scheduling item? Second call, Vice Chair Sutter.
Yeah, I do have a comment to make. I guess more stuff is gonna fill up between now and October 3rd, and I just think it'd be a good idea to get on the calendar. And I say that because we only have 2 weeks, in October before the council session. You're a former budget and finance committee member, isn't there usually like maybe an extra budget and finance committee meeting in order to make sure that any funding legislations make it through? Yeah. Or at least strategic to say.
Just look at on the chance. I'm open chance.
Yeah. I think.
Motion to put it on the chance.
You're gonna change the motion.
No, it's on the chance. The rest of the meeting, move it up
Okay.
I'd say that's like 9 a.m.
Aye.
Will be here.
on the 10th, right? On Tuesday.
Yeah. Not a second. Or you go to second. Just a second.
Delegate Azar is second for round.
10 o'clock.
Okay, so there's a modification to the motion to change the scheduling or deferment motion to scheduling the second meeting in October to October 10th at 9 a.m. Is that correct?
9 or 10?
You're the motion partner.
Okay, let's do 9.
9, okay. Delegate Azar, this second
Meeting.
regular meeting will be on October 10th at 9 a.m.
Instead of having the 17th, we have, there's no conference.
Yeah, you need a
Time left.
That-
What time is that?
Oh, yeah. Is it all fair? Well, you know, just, no, it's not certain too, but chair has an eminent time commission.
Well, let's see.
So it's a two.
Manual. Just a comments.
What about the night?
National People's Day, they were all supposed to be indigenous.
That's a holiday for the young people. Call themselves indigenous.
Indigenous Peoples' Day.
We can do it for 10. That's okay.
I mean, I'm fine with being on that. It's not an animation holiday, because we get banned against it.
No reports will get it over with.
Are you free tonight?
Okay, I'm okay on the night, yeah.
Yeah.
Like I said, I don't know if this is a man holiday.
You're not. Or Carly,
No, I'm not available.
you're not available next, what do you prefer the 10th?
Just kind of before the meeting with the legislature.
At 9 or 8. You can do it.
Thursday for.
Come to the caucus in the, for Arizona.
That's 2 p.m.
So we get started at 8.
There's more out
here.
there.
I'll get your. But.
8. We'll work at 8. 8, change it to 8
Well,
on the 10th, on 8,
8,
the 10th,
that's your motion, you're the main motion.
the
We'll
10th.
try some parlors.
At 8 a.m.
The 10th at 8 AM?
Yeah.
Okay, that's the motion on the floor, I feel like as we concur.
How many times?
Yeah.
October 10th at 8 AM.
Yeah,
Do you have something else?
yeah, I got two other things I need to do. We can do something else. Let's do the.
So we get everything done.
Right now, there's, Ms. Snapper, I haven't seen any legislation come through that require. I think it's gonna be a short meeting.
Okay.
That's what I'm seeing so far. Ms. Snapper, you see, go through, is there anything, what's the capacity, like, how many?
I'll concur. There you go.
No idea, I really think there may be some last minute ones, maybe 1 or 2, I don't know, I haven't seen.
Okay.
Advertised.
Okay, committee members, the motion party and the second party concur on October 10, 2023, 8 AM in the Budget and Finance Committee room. Do we have any other questions or comments or discussions on the scheduling of that meeting? Hearing none, Ms. Nelson, can you do a roll call vote to, for the scheduled motion?
And some. Madam Chair, roll call vote on the scheduling. Marvel, after how many vote?
Green.
Thank you. Marvel, after Honorable Norman and Day, how do you vote?
Green.
Thank you, Honorable Elizabeth Davis Green, Honorable Amber Smith Bonfati, how do you vote? I'm sorry, I vote green. Thank you, Honorable Amber Smith Bonfati, Green, Honorable Councilor, how do you vote?
Great.
Thank you, Honorable Councilor Green, Madam Chair, we have 4 members voting and the affirmative, so 3 opposing. Madam Chair, not voting, members excused. Madam Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Nelson. With that, well, let's close the session. We have no other, give it down.
Yeah.
Vice Chair Slater.
I got an email from the interpreter from Snag College saying that their annual meeting is going to be quarterly at 10 a.m. It says it's going to be live streamed on the Snag College Facebook page.
What is that?
That the Snag College annual meeting, 10 a.m. on the 4th of October. Wednesday. It's got the annual. Maybe that's something to say. Everybody. Yeah. Looks like it'll be on the radio too, on there, 92.
Thank you, Vice Chair Slater. Committee members, we have a.
We're going head to toe with Shiprock, okay?
What's
We
the,
got about 5, 6 delegates going to Ellen, so I need more.
Like, so we're going to last with a great, inundate.
What is the date?
7th, October 7th, in day with Shiprock. Yeah. So we're gonna divide the council delegate in half, which is already 24th against 25th, so we get the 25th over there in Alamo.
How about the 23rd?
23rd, yeah. They'll win.
Yeah, because how many of the 24th were 23rd members?
We chop the leapfrog, so on the 7th,
Myself, David,
Edward is going, Perry's going,
where,
Marta's going, I'm going.
where, Rick?
Alamo.
Oh, Al, no?
Yes, right.
We've been there too many times, it's the same thing.
No,
So the people defended you, help the Spanish people back for you guys, get to meet those people. That's what but then we're gonna have Robin bread with spam and green chili here.
Thank you so much for that gracious invitation. I really appreciate it.
The annual man. Right, Chris? See,
You should get one, like, it should be understood that the first year being a delegate, you can take all the fairs. You probably were, and everyone.
you gotta go, there's a golf tournament over there in Sapporo.
Oh, it's here.
Thank you, for your invitation. September 7th.
7.
Oh, you did great.
We're gonna go down here. The best
Great show.
lunch we ever had here.
Motion to adjourn.
Okay, there's a motion on the floor to adjourn. We have a second.
That's a like,
Special. Special.
Okay, committee members, we have further comments or questions?
Drinks, Molly, but-
Hearing none, Ms. Nelson, can you on the motion to adjourn?
Yes, Madam Chair, we call to adjourn, Marcus.
Great.
Thank you, Mark. Green, Marvin, and Gay, how do you vote?
Red. We have to eat first before we. Adjourn. Rest. Green.
Thank you, Arlen, Norman, Gay votes green, Arlen, Anderson, is about how do you vote? Green. Thank you. Look at Norman's night skills here.
Great. Okay.
Madam Chair,
Calendar.
you're opposing one member, Steve, Madam Chair, not voting, Madam Chair. You're gonna make.
Thank you, Ms. Nelson.
How vote is that?
We are adjourned at 12:37 p.m. Thank you.
Oh, the red. Oh, yeah.